GOP agenda. The president meets with the Senate Majority Leader, talking tax reform and health care. We're at the White House. Heading to a vote. The U.S. could have a new ambassador to the Holy See as the Senate votes on her confirmation. Fighting ISIS. Major gains made on a terror group controlling a city in the Philippines. And ending world hunger. The Pope has an urgent demand for leaders on this World Food Day. We'll have a report from Rome. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, October 16th, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. President Trump and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell say they share the same agenda to move America forward, despite media reports. The two are discussing legislative priorities like health care and tax reform. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. President Trump and Majority Leader McConnell met in the White House today and are pledging to work together on GOP goals. Those goals include pro-life legislation, and both leaders say their relationship is just fine.
President Trump says he and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell are closer than ever before.
My relationship with this gentleman is outstanding, has been outstanding.
And Senator McConnell is pushing back against the notion that he and Trump are at odds.
We have the same agenda. We've been friends and acquaintances for a long time. We talk frequently. We don't give you a readout every time we have a conversation, but frequently we talk on the weekends about the issues that are before us.
But the president has repeatedly blamed McConnell for the failure of the GOP Congress to repeal and replace Obamacare after years of promises to dismantle the law. Last week, the president moved to slash federal subsidies for Obamacare on his own.
What the president is doing is affecting the ability of vulnerable people to receive health care right now.
Senator Susan Collins, a moderate from Maine, was a pivotal no vote on health care and voted against the 20-week abortion ban in 2015.
Mr. President, you've talked about, your support for the 20-week abortion ban bill. How important is this bill to you?
I asked the president if he would talk about his support for the 20-week abortion ban. He turned it over to Senator McConnell.
Well, I'll let Mitch. You want to talk about that, Mitch?
Was the question about the 20-week
abortion ban bill? What are you going to do to...
Yeah, well, it's supported by virtually all of my members, and we expect to have a vote on it at some point.
The 20-week abortion ban bill would make it unlawful with limited exceptions to perform an abortion after 20 weeks of pregnancy. The bill has passed the House, and as you heard, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell expects a vote at some point in the Senate. That bill will need 60 votes, though, which will require some Democrat support. Lauren.
Mark, Leader McConnell said the single most significant thing the president has done to change America is the appointment of Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch. And the president was complaining that they can't get federal judges through.
That's right, Lauren. The president says he just wants really capable people going to the courts. He also slammed Democrats in Congress for obstructing his nominations to federal benches. But he added there are people of extraordinary quality in the pipeline awaiting approval. Lauren.
Thank you so much. Correspondent Mark Irons, nice job getting a question into the president. We'll talk to you soon. Joining us now is our Capitol Hill correspondent, Jason Calvi. We heard Mitch McConnell promise a vote at some point on this 20-week abortion ban. When can we expect it, and what is the likelihood of it passing?
I just spoke with Lindsey Graham's office. He's the sponsor of this 20-week abortion bill, and they say they're pushing for a vote, but they don't know anything about timing. I know some pro-lifers really want to see this vote take place in January. You know, the Senate right now is really engaged with pushing tax reform and the budget and a lot of other issues, so January seems like the first chance they'll really have to tackle this, but it's very, very unlikely to pass the Senate. That's because it needs 60 votes in that chamber, and Republicans only have 52 votes, and plus, as we heard in Mark's package there, his story there, Susan Collins, Senator Susan Collins of Maine voted against it. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska was absent the last time they voted. So it really, they're going to need at least 9 or 10 Democrats to vote for it. They got 3 votes last time from people like Joe Donnelly of Indiana, Bob Casey of Pennsylvania, and Joe Manchin of West Virginia. So they've got 3 last time.
But that means we're not really looking at this 20-week abortion ban bill passing, and the United States, unlike other countries, is one falling behind. Other countries have this kind of bill in place. Let's move on, though. You cover Capitol Hill, and you know all about government dysfunction. You see it every day. Well, up close and personal. What does it mean to have the President of the United States and the Senate Majority Leader standing side by side saying, hey, we're friends, we're on the same team, we have the same agenda?
We are best friends. It was incredible to see that happen, because this comes right after Steve Bannon, that's the president's former senior advisor, coming out at the Values Voter Summit this weekend saying we are going to wage war against the GOP establishment. This comes after his candidate, Roy Moore, beat the incumbent, Senator Luther Strange, in the Alabama GOP primary.
And that is McConnell's candidate.
Luther Strange was backed by McConnell and President Trump, and Bannon backed Roy Moore, and Roy Moore won.
Right, and so there is going to be, it looks like, from the president's former advisor, a big fight against McConnell. You see Trump lining up with McConnell, which makes sense because Bannon is out. Will this friendship make any difference when they are working with Senate Democrats?
It's interesting because you saw the president bashing the Democrats today as being obstructionists, getting in the way, especially on the judicial nominations. There's something like 150 open judicial seats. I think the president's nominated 50, and they're really, and we see the Democrats playing the clock out on all of those nominations, going for every single procedural hurdle they can put at those nominees.
So the answer is pretty much no.
No, but I know that having them stand on that same stage today was a big sign that the war in the GOP party, at least the president doesn't back that war. He wants to be with McConnell, at least publicly right now.
The unifier. All right, thank you so much, Jason Calvi, our Capitol Hill correspondent. The Senate plans to vote tonight on Callista Gingrich's nomination as the new U.S. ambassador to the Vatican. Gingrich is a devout Catholic and longtime member of the choir at the Basilica of the National Shrine in Washington, D.C. She's also the wife of the former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. He tells News Nightly Callista takes the role very seriously and wants to meet with the embassy staff in Rome before doing any interviews. Bo Bergdahl pleads guilty to 2 charges at a court-martial hearing today. The Army sergeant is accused of desertion and misbehavior before the enemy after leaving his base in Afghanistan in 2009. He was held prisoner by the Taliban until 2014. Bergdahl was tried by a military judge, not a jury, per his request. He faces a maximum sentence of life in prison. Firefighters are making gains on the California wildfires thanks to lighter winds. The fires have killed at least 40 people and destroyed thousands of homes and businesses. 40,000 evacuees are still waiting for permission to go back to their communities. The death toll in a double car bombing in Somalia rises to more than 300 tonight, with hundreds more injured. It is the deadliest terror attack in that country's history. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsby reports from the State Department. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. State Department officials are condemning the bombing in the strongest terms. The U.S. is offering our condolences to the victims and vowing to stand with the Somali people as they recover from the horrific bombing.
Devastation in the streets of Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. A truck bombing targeted a crowded street, leaving a trail of destruction and a large plume of smoke billowing from the scene. Residents describe the blast.
The scene was really devastating. We've never seen such a scene before. A lot of buildings have disappeared, completely became rubble. And after that, there was a second blast. We not far from the scene, and that's when everybody realized the scene was really unsafe, and we retreated back.
Somalia officials say the death toll is now more than 300. Dozens are still missing and hundreds more injured.
He was a good father. He loved America so much.
The family of a 50-year-old Somali living in Bloomington, Minnesota is in mourning after learning he was killed in the blast.
We miss him so much, and I want to know people know he was a great father. He has 2 jobs and helping us very much. He worked so hard.
Authorities are pointing the finger at the terrorist group Al-Shabaab, who has pledged allegiance to ISIS. The extremists have waged war in Somalia for more than a decade. In 2008, Islamic radicals attacked the country's only Catholic cathedral, leaving it in ruins. It's still not operational.
Christians have a tough time living out their faith in Somalia and are often the target of Islamic extremists. Plus, the government does not allow Christians to openly preach the gospel. The Catholic population reportedly is only 100 people in a country of 14 million, but the actual numbers may actually be much larger. There are some who claim to be Muslim but actually practice their Catholic faith in private, according to some reports. Lauren.
100 Catholics out of 14 million. That is shocking. But as you say, they're underground, it seems like. How is the U.S. helping African countries like Somalia fight back against these Islamic extremist groups?
Well, Lauren, lately the U.S. military has stepped up drone strikes against al-Shabaab in particular. In April, the Trump administration announced they were expanding operations in Somalia, sending in dozens of troops to help train the country's army. Right now, regional forces and the police are just not able to deal with the terrorists by themselves. Lauren.
Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the State Department. Thank you, Wyatt. 2 surviving terror suspects in a deadly siege in the Philippines are dead. The leaders were killed today as troops fight with pro-ISIS militants in the city of Marawi. They are still holding hostages there. More than 1,000 people have died in the violence since May, including more than 800 militants. Iraqi forces say they've taken control of several sites near the Kurdish-controlled city of Kirkuk. Tensions between Baghdad and the Kurds have been high since the Kurds voted for independence last month. Venezuela's opposition is denouncing the results of yesterday's regional election, where President Nicolas Maduro claimed victory. Venezuelans voted for 23 governors around the country. The vote was the first major election since the country's controversial Constituent Assembly vote in July. Protesters say the elections were not free and fair and don't reflect the will of the people. The remnants of the Hurricane Ophelia slam into Ireland, killing at least 3 people, grounding planes, and causing widespread power outages. Although Ophelia has been downgraded to a post-tropical cyclone, officials still call the storm unprecedented, with serious life-threatening conditions. A Vatican court convicts the former president of the Pope's Children's Hospital of abuse of office. Giuseppe Profiti was given a 1-year suspended sentence and $5,000 fine. He'll avoid jail time if he doesn't commit a crime for 5 years. The official used hospital funds to remodel the private apartment of a senior cardinal. The hospital's former treasurer, who was originally charged, was acquitted. Pope Francis is demanding governments work together to end world hunger. He says the key is to resolve conflicts and natural disasters that force people to leave their homes in search of their daily bread. EWTN News Nightly's Vatican correspondent Juliet Lindley reports from Rome.
Pope Francis arrives at the Food and Agriculture Organization, known as FAO, in Rome on World Food Day. His gift to the UN agency, a marble sculpture of an angel over the Syrian toddler who died crossing the Mediterranean. It's a tangible sign of his message.
Pope Francis often encourages the world to embrace migrants. And today, here at FAO headquarters, that message is echoed and expanded in the theme for this World Food Day, which this year is Change the Future of Migration, Invest in Food Security and in Rural Development.
Today, Francis cited the Paris Climate Accord.
Por desgracia, algunos se están alejando.
And in what appeared to be a jab at the US, lamented that some countries are distancing themselves from it. The Holy Father also said population control is a false solution.
Es una falsa solución.
The Pope says instead the answer is to better manage the world's resources and prevent waste. Last month, the UN reported that the number of chronically hungry people in the world is rising again after decades of decline. The cause, conflict and climate-related natural disasters. The Holy Father is appealing for a new model of cooperation to reduce hunger. It's a system based on love, fraternity and solidarity. That's the way Pope Francis says the world should respond to the needs of the poor. In Rome, Juliet Lindley, EWTN News Nightly.
Coming up, new saints for the Catholic Church.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
A look at the canonization mass of 35 individuals. On this date, 39 years ago, the College of Cardinals picked Cardinal Karol Wojtyła to be the new pope. He took the name John Paul II and was leader of the Catholic Church for 26 years until his death in 2005. Pope Francis is addressing the faith crisis in the Amazon region. He's called a special meeting of bishops focused on those 9 South American countries. The Holy Father announced the synod yesterday in St. Peter's Square. The Pope says the goal will be to identify new paths in countries like Brazil, Peru, Colombia, all for indigenous people who are often forgotten. The last special assembly of the Synod of Bishops was held in 2010 on the Middle East. You can read more about the upcoming synod right now at catholicnewsagency.com. Pope Francis gives the Church 35 new saints. He canonized them yesterday during a Mass at the Vatican. They are mostly martyrs, people killed because of their faith. 30 of them suffered anti-Catholic persecution in Brazil. A federal appeals court is preventing Arkansas from enforcing a pro-life rule on how the abortion pill is administered. It's part of a 2015 law requiring doctors maintain a contract with another physician who has admitting privileges at a hospital. 7 other states have had similar restrictions requiring agreements with local hospitals. The Health and Human Services Department says its mission is to protect Americans at every stage of life, beginning at conception. Pro-abortion groups say this language could lead to reduced access to abortions. Joining me now to discuss, Mallory Quigley, Communications Director for the Susan B. Anthony List, a pro-life advocacy group. Welcome back to the program.
Great to be with you, Lauren.
That language seems very strong to me in this draft strategic plan, which is basically a roadmap, right, of what the administration wants to accomplish. The introduction states, and I have it for us here, HHS accomplishes its mission through programs and initiatives that cover a wide spectrum of 61 activities, serving and protecting Americans at every stage of life, beginning at conception. What does that mean?
Wow, I mean, what a difference from the last administration, right? This is certainly very strong language. We've seen similar documents with Presidents Bush and Reagan talking about the importance of protecting human life, but this is very unprecedented to have it guiding the Department of Health and Human Services. And I think that really this language is just reflective of the incredibly strong personnel choices that President Trump has made early on.
Well, I know that Secretary Price has left, but you're saying other people under him? How
absolutely.
So?
Well, we've got incredible leaders like Katie Talento, who worked for pro-life Senator Tillis, Charmaine Yost from Americans United for Life. There's a myriad of pro-life leaders at all ranks over at the Department of HHS, and I think that, you know, putting the people in place has yielded this document. Their guiding document, and certainly many of the incredible developments that we've had just recently in the last couple of weeks with the preventive services mandate and the rules now for religious and moral objectors.
Will this strategic plan, will this language stay, do you think, in the regular plan?
I don't see any reason why it shouldn't. I mean, this is the way that the administration is governing already, and so this is just, they're putting words to their actions.
Earlier we heard White House correspondent Mark Irons ask the president about the 20-week abortion ban, and we heard Mitch McConnell promise a vote at some point. What needs to happen to get this bill through the Senate? Jason Calvi, our Capitol Hill correspondent, said it's not going to happen.
Well, Jason's right that the 60-vote threshold is very, very difficult. It's going to be a tough one to reach. We got 3 Democrats last time, but we've got an important election coming up in 2018, and so many senators who are up for re-election are in red states where the president won, where this legislation is very popular. 60–70% of their constituents supporting it. That is including even Democrats, and we have polling that reveals that their voters would be much less likely to vote for them if they want to continue the status quo.
And if they don't want this abortion ban.
Right.
All right. Mallory Quigley, thank you so much, Communications Director for the Susan B. Anthony List.
My pleasure.
Up next, head coach of the U.S. men's soccer team is out after a humiliating failure to qualify. Sports agent Doug Eldridge breaks down the impact. And aiming for new heights. A new show looking at the secrets of the Sistine Chapel. Today, the church honors St. Hedwig on her feast day. She was the daughter of the Duke of Croatia and married the head of the Polish royal family. After her husband died, she became a Cistercian and died in the convent in the year 1243. For the first time in 30 years, the U.S. soccer team will not play in the World Cup. The team's coach, Bruce Arena, resigned the team after it failed to qualify. The U.S. Soccer Federation is now struggling to figure out what went wrong as broadcasters, sponsors, and fans face the impact of the loss. Joining us now is Doug Eldridge, sports agent, public relations consultant, the managing partner of DLE Agency, and an EWTN News Nightly friend. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
How big of a business impact for companies that have invested money is this? And they now don't have a big audience in the U.S.
It's huge, and I can quantify and qualify that. Okay, Fox Sports is arguably the biggest loser here. They spent a record $425 million for the English language only rights to the World Cup. Now I say English language only because we typically split English versus Spanish language viewing audience. ESPN paid the same amount, but that was for English and Spanish during the prior World Cup cycle.
Somebody didn't get a
So the
good
trend
deal.
line was going like this because of viewership and participation and youth numbers, etc. So Fox has a huge loss here, but also sponsors. There were two major cornerstone sponsors that signed on, VW and Verizon. The remainders were hanging on to ensure that the U.S. men's team signed on. So now they're effectively going to buy for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, it seems like the business impact is big, but I'm wondering about the human.
$500 million.
That is big. Okay, it is big. I'm wondering about the human aspect, the next generation of athletes. Right now there are kids playing soccer all over the world in all of the countries that we broadcast in. Aren't they going to lose interest without a team to play, this U.S. team?
Well, when it comes to something like the World Cup or the Olympics, you really need two key things for short and long-term sustainment. In the short term, you need sponsors. You need to keep the lights on. In the long term, you need youth, because youth become teens, teens become adults, either as your next generation of players or your next generation of viewers and consumers of the sponsors that support you. When we look back at 2014, there was roughly, which was a World Cup year, there was roughly 3 million members of U.S. youth soccer. It was also their 40th anniversary, I believe. To put it in context, when we talk about trend lines, right, like how much Fox spent, it was the same as ESPN, but for essentially half the product. When we talk about trend lines, when that was measured in 1989, the year before the U.S. started the first of their 7 consecutive World Cups in 1990, it was 1.6 million children.
So 1.6 million to 30 million.
To 3 million.
To
3 million kids.
1.6 to 3.
Doubled
so
over
doubled
the course of 7 World Cups. But that's what, to your point, that's what visibility can do. Parents have the opportunity to point to these athletes on the field, and whether from a means of participation and inclusion or a means of role model, it's something to literally and figuratively point to. So there is a big drop-off there.
I have to just ask, what went wrong? We don't have very much time.
It was a multitude
happened?
of things.
What
There is
happened?
no single instance, factor,
Okay.
play, or player that you can point your finger on.
Okay.
There needs to be a rebuild from the top down.
All right. Thank you so much. Doug Eldridge, sports agent, PR consultant. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
The Sistine Chapel might be coming to a theater near you. The Vatican museums have collaborated with Sting and producers of Olympic ceremonies to create a live show. It tells the tale of Michelangelo and his masterpiece at the Vatican. The $10 million production debuts in March at an auditorium in Rome. And boy, oh boy, I wish I could be there, but I don't think so. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, thank you for watching. I'm Lauren Ashburn. We'll be back tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. And we will leave you tonight with more images from yesterday's canonization of 35 new saints. Good night, and God bless you.